Hello friends, Eerie Stormlight here. Today I wanted to share a bit about how modern literature and modern media contains a lot of truth, even if it's fantasy, even if it's science fiction, and how we can learn more about folk magic and folk healing through the process of reading literature. And to help me today, I have the Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. Why am I choosing to use this book as my example? First off, it is the last book I finished reading. I finished reading it last night. That's part of why this is going to be unscripted and kind of very off the cuff and unprepared. But I did mark some things, some passages I want to share. To be clear, this is not a review. This is not a review of the book. This is an example of how there is truth inside this book that we can apply to our modern lives. This is how truth was taught throughout history. Bards and poets wrote down their epics, memorized their epics. The oral epics taught the truths of a society down the generations. Basic premise of this book that is not spoilery. There is a man who wakes up in a circle of burned earth and has to piece together where he is, when he is, what is he doing, and why are things not exactly as the world should be. In other words, we just jump-started the hero's journey straight to inciting incident, and you don't have a choice. There is a lot of discovery going on in this book, both discovery of the world around him and discovery of himself. Because over the course of the book, he remembers more and more things about himself. And he remembers how he's always been a failure. Or he feels he has always been a failure. That he has never actually finished anything. And there is a quote about that. Okay, I found the quote. Sorry for the jump cut. The quote is, "A little pebble starts an avalanche. Life isn't like the craps table, where the next roll has the same chance of winning as the last one. In real life, you lose a little, and that makes you wonder if you deserve to lose. You get nervous, make mistakes, overcompensate, and that makes you lose more. Then it compounds. Eventually you're so far gone. No one thing had ruined me. It had just piled on." And isn't that just what it feels like? Isn't that a truth found in fiction? I know for myself, in my own experiences, there was a period of my life that I felt like absolute shit. I felt like nothing could go right. Everything was going wrong, and I couldn't fix anything. But it wasn't because some grand disaster had happened. It was a long series of decisions, none of which had seemed important at the moment. But there's hope. Because just like John in this book, we don't have to stay that way. We can change our perception of ourselves. Our perception is so powerful. Our framing is so powerful. And throughout this book, John goes through many frames because he lost all of his memories. So he had no idea who he was, other than waking up in a circle of burned field, but not a mark on him. That does eventually get explained, but that would be spoilers. Some of the various things that he thinks he might have been. I promise, this is not particularly spoilery. I'm also throwing in some that will throw you off. He thinks Oh, I'm good at sneaking. I must have been a thief. But there are other people who are good at sneaking. For example, undercover cops. There are ballerinas can be good at sneaking. Little kids can be good at sneaking. That doesn't mean he was a thief, but that was what he was afraid of when he had no memories. Some of the quotes that I want to share are about this one, so this one's not a big surprise. He thought he might have been an artist because he realizes that he can actually figure draw pretty well. Not like expert level, but well enough that it is easily recognizable what he's drawing or who he's drawing. The people around him think that this is magic, because how can he reproduce someone so clearly? But as he tries to explain, it's not magic. It's just a craft. So it starts with this. What in Twee's holy name is that? She was writing beside me again and pointed at my hands. The writing, I said? Yes, I know, incantations and... No! What is that you've done beside it? I looked at the quick sketch I'd done of her face. Nothing all that good, just a simple line drawing. With a modern understanding of perspective. Cross-hatching to shade, a basic artist's knowledge of the underlying musculature and the way the shadows fell. Hot damn! Maybe my education hadn't been completely useless. You never know what random skill might impress someone. These two characters have a later conversation about this, where she is questioning, because he keeps drawing, it actually ends up being useful on his adventure in multiple places. There we go. So this is John speaking again. Drawing people isn't as hard as you think, I said from horseback. Craft is not, I have no idea how I'm supposed to be pronouncing that, because that is the Gaelic spelling, so oops. Is not as hard as I think, Cephawan said, walking alongside. Right. It's not craft, I said. Just like turning aside steel weapons. Oop, that would be a spoiler. That's a different kind of not craft, I said, smiling. Look, if you went back in time to talk to some caveman, they'd probably think your ability to control fire is magical. Sure, she said. What's a caveman? Again, perspective. Framing. Because of his different knowledge and different understanding, he seems like a miraculously gifted, magical being. But he's human. He makes mistakes, just like us. And he talks multiple times throughout this book about how life is hard. And he wanted to be something. He wanted to escape. He says, then I remembered that my life is a mess. Everyone else seems to innately know what they love. When things were going poorly for me in the academy, I started keeping a list of things I liked and didn't like. I thought if I rated things, it would give me the proper context to compare. I hoped it would lead me to who I am, to what I like. Now, if that isn't relatable, I don't know what is. So much of storytelling about folk magic is about perspective. It's about learning to connect with people. It's about understanding the stories they are telling themselves. He goes from being a failure to being a legend, to being a hero. Because he gains new knowledge. He gains new perspective. He realizes something. This is him talking about someone from his past. He liked me being weak, bearing the scars of my fall, the dive he had ordered me to take, then mocked me for he realized that a lot of the things around him were not what he thought, both about the people he despised and the people he thought were his friends. He makes some new friends in this world, in this time. And he interacts with people from before he goes on this journey. And one of the things that he sees, or that is said to him, like I said, I didn't prep particularly well for this. I was just so excited to have finished and enjoyed such a good story that really appealed on a lot of levels. Oh, maybe it is. It's the one that's hiding right behind the others. So one of his new friends asks him this. Once again, those are your friends? I thought they were. I didn't have a good frame of reference, I guess. And he learns this through a previous experience, which I think a lot of people will identify with, particularly if you haven't seen someone in a long time and they keep using a name that you really wish they wouldn't for you. Nobody knows that, Johnny. Besides, it doesn't even work. Cephalin squeezed my arm. You do say such strange things. Runian, your world, what is it like? Why do you call him that? Ryan asked. It's the name he asked me to call him. It's silly, Ryan said. His name is Johnny. Everyone calls him Johnny. A name is a simple thing. But Elston deliberately saying it like that and Cephalin doing the same made me a little emotional. Ryan had known me all my life. Never noticed I didn't call myself Johnny. My name was John. It was how I'd always introduced myself. Friends care about us. Friends notice these things. As a folk healer, we need to notice these things too. Take notice of the names that people prefer to be called, even if it has nothing to do with their actual name. One of my coworkers goes by Bones. Why? I still haven't got the full story as to why they prefer the name Bones over their birth name. I have part of it. But what was important to notice is that they want to be called Bones. That makes them comfortable. That supports them. So, I follow that. In the book, John preferred to be called Runian. It felt more appropriate to him at that moment. So, it's what he called himself. And it's what his friends called him. Okay, I have wandered all over the place. So, some more concrete examples of how folk magic works its way into modern media. This one is also very true of the hero's journey. They think you're a witch. Or a forest spirit, she said. Or a god in disguise. You have to watch out for those. Nobody believes I'm a regular old woman walking the roads. It's too suspicious. This is one of my favorite characters in the entire book who is saying this. Because on one hand, yes, she is just an old woman. But on the other hand, she is so much more. Because of this perspective, this understanding. She knows who she is. She knows what she is. She doesn't care what other people call her. Because it doesn't matter. She enjoys the journey. She knows herself. Okay, so some examples that I'm not using quotes for, but are very much it's hard to pull a quote because it's through the entire novel. It's just part of the setting. While this is very much a sci-fi, it is simultaneously also historical fiction. It's both. And it is so much fun. Some examples of folk magic that are in this book. Land rights, or land spirits. Runestones. Writing is magical. Stories have power. Boasts have power. All of these are real folk magic from the Northern Isles. So Scotland, Sweden, Ireland, Great Britain, Norway, all of those islands have these kinds of folk traditions. They vary country to country and even within each country, but we have a lot of historical evidence of these practices. Their exact usage, not so much, but we have evidence that they existed. So, land spirits leave out an offering, and they will perform a task for you because it's an exchange, it's a barter. This is very common in parts of the British Isles as folklore of leave out a little cream and sugar for the brownie who lives in the house. Because if you do, they will ensure things don't break. They will fix things before you notice they're broken. In the book, it's a little more concrete of you leave out a task that you want accomplished with a suitable offering, and they will take care of the task for you, provided they have sufficient strength and ability to do so. But simultaneously, there are the good and the bad. There are those that are landed, those that are bound to a location or a purpose, who are very happy to help because they have a contract in place. You provide them with an offering and they do work within the bounds of the contract. But then there are those that are not landed, those who are not tied to a runestone, those who are unbound. And those are very dangerous. They're the monsters. This is very common in folklore. This is very common in folk magic and in the various practices of magic from around the world. Runestones. Nordic runestones were drawn to memorialize an event or to put a blessing on an area. More than that, we know very little because there's actually very little historical evidence as to the specifics of the rights or the usages of runestones. We just know that we've found a lot of examples. And while we can read the text on them, some of them, because we know how to read the Elder Futhark and the Younger Futhark and various other runic languages, we don't necessarily know the function of all of them. There is biblical precedence for this, though, as well. In the Bible, there are multiple references of raising a stone in memorial to a major event because the stone witnessed the event, and so it can continue to bear witness into the future. This also plays into animism and the belief that objects have souls, have memories. And so all of this plays together, and it's in our modern media. You can find truth if you are looking almost anywhere. I've reached the point where I'm kind of rambling, and I'm going to have to edit this so much to have it make any comprehensive sense. So I will leave it there and say, remember to look. Remember to think about your perspective and to change it every once in a while, especially if you're getting down in the dumps about failure. Because sure, you might have failed at one thing, but there's something else completely unrelated that I'm sure you're good at. If you look, if you focus on something other than the negative. So, that being said, walk in the light. Bye.